Papa told me I couldn't do a lot of things.
I feel like I'm the chosen one.
Look at this. We created this. This didn't exist before we were here. All we are is proud and passionate. I love Toronto. I love this team. And we're going to the NBA Finals. Let's go!
Nothing matters but winning.
Welcome back to episode 31 of Rapzville Weekly, starring Gabriel Chelio and Adam Casucci. Today we are doing our Week 8 NBA recap, and we are moving on basically to the conference finals. So starting off with the Lakers versus the Rockets, this week was a little quieter with only 6 games that occurred since we're nearing the back end of the playoffs. So to start with the round 2 matchups, we had Game 5 of LA versus Houston. This game looked very decisive from the beginning, where the Lakers outscored the Rockets 35-20 in the first quarter. Their second and last quarters were also solid, but the third quarter is what decided this game, as the Rockets were once again outscored, this time 33-18. LeBron led with 29 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals on 9 for 18 field goal. Kuzma also had 17 points, 5 for 9 shooting. Davis only 13 points and 11 boards in 34 minutes. And Green actually contributed 14 points, 4 for 6 shooting, also 4 for 6 from 3. And Morris, he was huge tonight, 16 points, 6 for 7 shooting in his second start at center in back-to-back games. The Lakers played the last two games of this series, sorry to spoil the series, in the small ball lineup to match up with the Rockets lineup. Morris did play well throughout this series, especially this game and Game 2, where he also dropped 16 points. Harden had 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists for the Rockets, 12 for 20 shooting, and 6 turnovers. Only Westbrook and Green were the other guys in double digits with 10 and 13 points respectively, and they both shot poorly while doing so, 4 for 13 and 3 for 9. So Westbrook clearly did not show up for a series-deciding game. Obviously, a big problem for the Rockets was that there was no supporting cast for Harden, whereas the Lakers had 6 guys in double-digit scoring. And comparing the team stats, the shooting was drastically different, 53% versus 37% from the field, and 51 versus 26% from three-point. Lakers shot twice as well from 3 compared to the Rockets. That's obviously a huge problem, especially for the Rockets that are a really offensive team. That's what they rely on, and if they can't shoot well, then they're not winning. Lakers also abused their size too. They out-rebounded 50-31, and they also got 7 blocks versus the Rockets 3. And also 34 points in the paint. So it was clearly just a size domination, and they attacked that small ball lineup, which is what you'd expect when you have someone like PJ Tucker at center. You expect teams to abuse that matchup inside, and when you have someone like Davis, that's obviously your chance to do so. The Lakers also had a huge lead of 30 points at one instance in this game. So obviously this game was clear, very clear. The final score ended up being 119-96 Lakers, so they moved on to the Western Conference Final.
Okay, moving on to the Clippers and Nuggets series. The Lakers waited to see who would be their matchup in the Western Conference Finals based on who came out of this series. We left off after Game 5, Nuggets staying alive and looking hopeful towards Game 6. The Clippers owned the first half of this game, leading 63-47. And up 16, it looked like Denver was going home. But in the second half, Denver completely obliterated the Clippers 64-35. Leading the comeback and then taking a demanding lead. By the end, Nuggets took this one 111-98 and forced the Game 7. The second half took a huge toll on the Clippers' overall play. The Nuggets led in shooting percentages, 54% versus 41%, and their rebounds were 41-37, and assists 26-20. Jokic had a killer performance of 34 points, 14 rebounds, and 7 assists on 13 for 22 shooting. Murray played very well too with 21, 5 and 5 on 9 for 13 shooting. Finally, Gary Harris had 16 points, 4 assists, and 4 steals. For the Clippers, the only real standout players were Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Kawhi had 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists on 8 for 18 shooting. George had a team-high 33 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 steals on 9 for 21 shooting. They still remained confident after this loss because they felt like they were such a solid team that this would not faze them and that they put themselves in this situation, so it's their job to win this final game. Meanwhile, Denver felt that they played best with their back against the walls, hence the reason they forced another Game 7. And boy, was this one interesting. The first half had the Clippers up by 2, both quarters being very close and a biggest lead of 12 points for the Clips. But once again, they broke down in the second half, and they did so very badly. No one could get their shots to land, especially their two biggest stars. Playoff P went back to pandemic P as he shot 4 for 16 by the end of the game, 2 for 11 from 3. He only ended with 10 points and 4 rebounds. May I remind you, this is a Game 7 of the second round of the playoffs. Also, that clutch Kawhi Leonard, we met this time last season against the 76ers. He disappeared. Kawhi ended with 14, 6, and 6 on 6 for 22 shooting after 43 minutes of play. The second or third best player in this league who gets compared to LeBron James had this type of stat line in a Game 7 after being up 3-1. That's not going to do it for the Clippers. Montrezl Harrell was the only real good player with 20 points on 7 for 10 shooting. I guess that's why there are rumors he wants to leave and that the Raptors are interested, because his team performed horribly and he knew it. As you can tell, the Nuggets stole this one dramatically, winning 104-89 and becoming the first team ever to come back from 3-1 deficits in one playoff season.
Wow.
Absolutely phenomenal from them. Definitely a team to watch out for, and they are finally showing people why they deserve some respect. They can be playoff contenders as well, not just a regular season team, and they did the impossible here. I hope they use this incredible season to their advantage and go out to win that chip. Lou Williams was disappointed in this team and publicly acknowledged the lack of chemistry in this team, which is very interesting. For the Nuggets, Murray sent this one home specifically as he had a legendary individual performance. He had 40 points and 5 assists on 15 for 26 shooting. This includes 6 3 balls, one being a dagger fadeaway over Kawhi Leonard as the shot clock expired. We also have to acknowledge Nikola Jokic's mastery. He did not have the best shooting night, but he absolutely controlled this game on both ends. He ended with a beautiful stat line, 16 points, 22 rebounds, and 13 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks. This dynamic duo somehow did it, but it came with a lot of dependency on the two. They had 5 turnovers each this game, and once we get to the Western Conference Finals, we will talk about the dynamic duo moving forward. What we want to talk about now is the big question. Was it worth it, Kawhi? Left us, no championship. Both got out in Game 7s of the second round. Could have helped each other. Bucks were out and not to worry about. Paul George was MIA most of the playoffs. Pascal could have went back to being the second option, which he needs to be. And what he's really good at, I don't know if he's that same guy being the primary scorer, and it really showed in the Raptors series.
Yeah, definitely having Kawhi back here would have made a huge difference this playoffs. And like Adam said, was it really worth it to leave? You thought we didn't have a chance, but we both got out in the exact same round, the same position, same game. So you didn't do much better over there, especially with a player like Paul George who you wanted to go out with. He ended up being very costly most of the playoffs. So they are a new team. Maybe their chemistry will differ for next year's playoffs. Maybe it'll be worth it if they can win a championship or at least make it to the finals. But for right now, I think that move was very costly and it was a very bad decision from him because we did quite well this season, and with him, we could have done even better. And someone like Pascal Siakam may have remained in check and would have done better in the playoffs. Not to mention the competition in the East this year. It would have been very interesting to have him, especially against Boston. He would have did a number on them. So it's sad to not have him here, and I feel like he made a big decision leaving because it didn't get him very far. Moving on to the Boston Celtics versus the Miami Heat. This is already the battle in the Eastern Conference Finals, and this week recap, we've seen 2 of its games. In Game 1, we had a very exciting battle where the teams alternated their dominance in each quarter. Boston won the first one, 26-18, and then Miami won the second, 37-29. They did the same thing for the second half too. The field goal comparisons between these two were roughly similar, but Miami had a better 3-point percentage. They out-rebounded Boston, had far more assists, and also a lot of points in the paint. Clearly, this game was Miami was exploiting the Boston Celtics' weaknesses, which the Raptors were unable to fully do. The Heat spent most of the final quarter trailing, though, fighting to stay alive, and eventually Kemba hit a tough floater over Crowder, pushing the score to 105-100 with just over a minute to go. Going the other way, Hero got his defender to jump on a pump fake and then still shot the 3-ball as the defender was passing by. He managed to hit that big 3-pointer, cutting the lead to 105-103. Then after a defensive stop, the Heat had a chance to tie or take the lead. After some strong driving kick game, the ball ended up in Jimmy Butler's hands in the corner with some space to shoot. He pump faked his three, got the defender to jump by him, and then he sidestepped to shoot and nailed the dagger. Now 106-105 with 22 seconds to go. What cost them here was that there was a foul on Marcus Smart before inbounding, which led to one technical free throw, which Jason Tatum took and scored. So he tied the game 106-106. And then eventually, Tatum fell short on a game-winning three-pointer, so this one headed to overtime. And overtime was just as exciting and back and forth. Being down 114-113, Miami had the ball with just under 20 seconds left, and Jimmy Butler drove to the rack, causing an and one. He made the free throw, and the score was now 116-114 with 12 seconds left. Boston inbounds, and Tatum gets the ball back with the clock expiring. He drove to the rack, blowing by Butler, and it looked like an easy way to tie the game. He went up for the monster slam, but Bam Adebayo flew across the net and met Tatum at the rim, getting a clean, clutch block and ending this game in a victory, 117-114 after a free throw. Dragic ended up with the most points this game, getting 29. He also added 7 rebounds and 4 assists. Crowder contributed 22 points, Butler 20, and Bam 18. Well-rounded performance from that team. As a team overall, they played very solid, and they had a lot of help from their stars. For Boston, Tatum dropped 30 points, 14 boards, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Killer stat line, obviously well-rounded. And Marcus Smart added 26 points, Kemba added 19. So series is now 1-0 Miami, on to game 2. Boston owned the first half, 60-47. And at one point, they held a lead of 17 points. So this game looked very favorable in one direction. Miami dominated the third quarter, though, which changed the tide as they outscored Boston 37-17. This was largely due to strong play from Duncan Robinson, who added his 6th three-pointer of the night in that quarter. He finished with 18 points in the game. And then as the quarter ended, you knew the Heat had some good luck when Kelly Olynyk was hitting a fadeaway 3 bank shot while the clock expired. The quarter ended 84-77 Miami. Veterans Dragic and Butler continued to make good plays and big baskets down the stretch of the fourth quarter. Dragic's biggest shot came with just under 2 minutes to go when he went behind the back for a step-back 3 as the shot clock was expiring. He hit the clutch 3 to push the lead 100-94 and then made a pull-up midi right after. This game was 104-98 and looked like it was close to being decided, but Jaylen Brown wanted to make it interesting. After Dragic hit that step-back 3 before the midi, Jaylen Brown hit a three-pointer, and then after the mid-range, when it was 104-98, he hit a kick-out three-pointer to tighten the lead 104-101 with 48.7 on the clock. Jimmy Butler drew a foul the next play, making both free throws, so he had a 106-101 lead, 7.4 seconds left, and the Celtics tried a quick alley-oop score to not waste any time on the clock. The pass was intercepted, however, by Jimmy Butler, who did amazing on defense this entire game. He flew back to intercept the pass on a cutting Jaylen Brown, and then the Heat quickly grabbed the rebound and ran out the clock to win the game. The Heat are officially up 2-0, and the Celtics blew another big lead this game, which had them all infuriated. This led to Marcus Smart yelling at his teammates in the locker room, and other players were also yelling at each other. And it was reported that objects were being thrown in the locker room also. Dragic led the Heat with 25 points and 5 assists, which makes sense as he controlled that final quarter. He has been very consistent and strong in the playoffs so far, and for the team in general. I think he's been a fantastic piece, especially if he comes off the bench. He's really a killer asset, but then now, even at his chance with starting, he's shown his veteran experience in the playoffs, and it's been very helpful towards them. Adebayo added his 21 points and 10 rebounds, double-double on 10 for 16 shooting. Butler shot poorly, going 4 for 11, ending with 14 points, but he did have his 4 steals. Like we said, he had a killer defensive performance, and he played very well in the fourth quarter. For Boston, Kemba led with 23 points and 7 assists. Tatum and Brown added 21 points apiece. And a big problem this game was turnovers, though. Kemba and Tatum had 5 each. Smart had 4. So Boston had a total of 20 compared to the Heat, which only had 9. Boston shot better overall this game and had more rebounds, but far less assists. Plus, they struggled with points off of their turnovers. So series ends 2-0 for now. On to the next couple of games. We'll see what happens. Adam, what are your predictions for this series? Do you see Miami closing this one out, or do you think Boston's going to get back in it?
I see Miami in 7, to be honest. I think Boston will make a little bit of a comeback here. I feel like the teams are evenly matched, but I think Miami, they have a better coach team. They're more solid on the defensive end as well as the offensive end.
Okay. Yeah, I think that it's going to be an interesting one down the stretch. Boston, obviously, very solid team like we saw. Miami as well, fantastic team. I love the way they play. I think they play great basketball. They've been very solid this series. They have a lot of interesting pieces that can be deadly threats, whether that be the veterans and Jimmy Butler and Dragic, or the young emerging star Bam. And at the same time, you have guys like Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero who can hit clutch three-pointers and big shots throughout the course of the game, along with Jay Crowder, a very solid piece who is, an underrated player, especially this season. I think he's been playing fantastic basketball, and he's been a key piece for them on both ends of the floor. So, yeah, it's going to be a close one. I'm thinking maybe Heat in 6 or 7. Boston really has to bounce back, especially maybe from some chemistry loss after that change room yelling match. But it makes sense because they held a lot of the leads throughout the games. Game 1 and 2, they did hold double-digit leads, so it's their job to close it out and not break down later on in the game. So they have to do a better job at that. A second question for you, Adam. What do you think Miami is doing better than us, the Raptors? Is it the zone defense that they've played a bit and it seemed to be somewhat effective? Or do you think that maybe they're attacking their offense a little differently by going through the bigs like Bam a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's an advantage, obviously, for Miami, which we didn't have with Marcus Sol obviously not being able to score and do much offensively. Ibaka, you can go through him a bit, but he doesn't have that playmaking ability that Bam has. So that answers kind of the offensive question. And on the defensive end with the zone defense, yes, I do think by sitting Bam in the paint and having everyone outside on the perimeter and defending the perimeter shooting guys like Kemba, Brown, Tatum. If you're defending them, I mean, it's going to make it much easier. And you're forcing them in the paint, which is Bam's strength. Obviously, defending the rim protecting, right? So that kind of worked for them in the series, and it's showing, obviously, with them up 2-1.
Yeah, I noticed after the second games, the analysts were talking about it. The zone defense was being very effective because Miami was playing very heavily on shutting down that 3 ball. And they were letting some of the gaps open that you usually see in zone defense. They were leaving those gaps like very wide open, especially like under the rim, near the top of the keys. Like those spots were open, but Boston was not at all capitalizing on those opportunities. So they maybe have to go back, sit through some film, and realize where the points are of attack when you have the zone defense on you.
For sure. So now moving on to the Lakers and Nuggets series. We only get to talk about Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals today, which saw the Lakers steamroll the Nuggets in the second round and the second and third quarter. The Nuggets had to claw their way back in the fourth, but couldn't fully do it. So this game ended 126 to 114. Davis dominated this game with 37 points and 10 rebounds, but LeBron did not play as aggressive with a 15, 6, and 12 stat line. The reason Lakers did win, though, is because they had some sparks from guys that are usually quiet. KCP, for example, had 18 points on 6 for 10 shooting. Dwight Howard had 13 points, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. There's been a lot of special social media buzz about his matchup versus Jokic, and he's been talking a lot of smack to Jokic too. Jokic still ended up with 21 points, 6 rebounds, but also had 4 turnovers. Murray also had 21 points, and finally, Michael Porter Jr. had a solid 14 and 10 game. The Lakers shot better from the field and from 3, had less rebounds, but far more assists than the Nuggets. Much more steals and blocks than Denver too, which is a testament to their strong defense this game. This led to them having a 27-point lead at one instance this game. Gabe, my first question is, what is your prediction for this series between the Nuggets and the Lakers?
So the Nuggets have been very strong throughout the playoffs. We've seen them accomplish the impossible. Being down 3-1 doesn't seem to faze them. So if that happens this series, I guess you can't count them out. From this first game, I think that it really showed what can happen when the Lakers are at full strength, when they're playing at their best. Because like we said with the Lakers, they've been very on and off so far this bubble, but it's clearly been for one reason. Does the supporting cast show up? We know LeBron and Davis are bound to have solid nights, but it's always been, is KCP shooting well? Is Danny Green shooting well? Is Morris or Howard being a spark off the bench with some energy some inside points. It's always about that supporting cast, and I think this game clearly showed when you have that cast rolling, when KCP's putting up 18 points, he's shooting well. When you have Dwight Howard off the bench showing some energy, a lot of the guys in the team played. They had 11 guys playing that game, or maybe more. I think 11 guys playing, and I believe 10 of them scored. Rondo putting in a couple points. He had 9 assists, so he was moving the ball fantastically off the bench, moving up in the NBA all-assist record. You have guys like Kuzma contributing to some baskets, I think at 11 points. So when you have those guys off the bench that are all contributing, this team can be very well-rounded and deep. But when they aren't, that's when the Nuggets can capitalize. I'm not sure what's going to happen here with Murray and Jokic if they two alone can handle this series. But I think that Lakers are the stronger team overall, and as long as they're playing that well-rounded game, they can do it. But they have been a little quiet, and guys have fallen asleep, like Danny Green and KCP. So I think that this one might be Lakers, but maybe in 6. I think the Nuggets will win some, hopefully. We don't want to see them go out in a crappy way after they've done so much hard work and they've done 2 3-1 comebacks. So hopefully they can make this series interesting, and I'm hoping they can win it. I'm rooting for them, but I'm going to go with Lakers in 6.
Lakers in 6. Yeah, I would have to agree on that one. I think, Murray and Jokic are, I think, one of the best dynamic duos in the NBA. I feel that Jokic can't play make as much and won't be getting as much double teams with the Lakers. Because in the Clippers series, when you have a smaller center like Montrezl Harrell, Jokic was abusing that one-on-one matchup, and he was scoring from it. So once the Clippers realized that, they started double teaming, and then Jokic started using his playmaking ability, which is his strength, and started getting other guys involved. So I mean, if Jokic can really exploit that and score one-on-one versus the likes of Howard and Davis, I feel like Denver can have a chance, but if he can't use that one-on-one matchup, it'll be really tough without the Lakers double team.
Howard and Davis are both very strong, and it's going to be very hard to back them down and get good post looks. You also got McGee in there, who's a long guy. It depends if they go smaller with Morris. Maybe that would be Jokic's chance, but I think that it's going to be tough, a lot more tough than the Clippers, like you said, for that size matchup and strength. And one thing that came to my head was the Clippers, when they talked about their chemistry being a problem, and Lou Will said that the team doesn't have chemistry, I feel like that can't be a good excuse. I've seen it on the court. They didn't look like they played the best together, but that just might be the play styles coming together, because you can't really base it on team chemistry when the Lakers have a lot of new pieces this year, and they're just like a first-time team, and they did their part closing the series out. Meanwhile, the Clippers blew a 3-1 lead. So I'm not going to really get by that excuse from them, and Kawhi Leonard's got some debts to pay now to whoever he told going to like the Clippers would be the better option.
No, yeah, I have to agree with you, Gabe, because also when I was watching that series, I kind of saw Paul George, Lou Will, and Kawhi. When they were on the floor together, a lot of them were waiting at the top of the arc for the ball. Even on the wings, they weren't like making off-ball movements, and they weren't kind of, when someone else had the ball, one of the stars, either it be Kawhi or Paul George, Lou Will was waiting on the wings. He wasn't really playing that shooter's role, that role that you need to play off the ball. He was kind of waiting for it, and he wanted like his own chance to ISO and I feel that's not the right recipe, obviously, to winning basketball, and I think it hurt them in the end.
I agree. Okay, final question for you, Adam. Who do you think are going to be the X factors in this series? What players, maybe besides the main Davis, LeBron, Jokic, Murray?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the Denver Nuggets here. I think Jeremy Grant and Michael Porter Jr. Will be the X factors for Denver if they can make a run, as well as maybe Paul Millsap. But I'm choosing here Jeremy Grant and Michael Porter Jr. They can shoot the ball well. They can drive and score on the inside. And especially Michael Porter, we haven't seen his full potential yet, and I feel like he has more to bring, especially with him coming off the bench. So I want to see more of him, and I want to see what he can do. With the Lakers, I think Rondo, with having LeBron resting and Rondo kind of controlling the point area there, I feel like he's a great playmaker. Yep. He kind of makes the teams makes the Lakers play into their sets and gets their plays going, and he's like the floor general with LeBron off the court, and he's going to be a big part in the Lakers' success if they do make it past the Nuggets.
I agree. He is playoff Rondo. That's his name for a reason. They want an experienced player going on the floor. He's a great passer. You can see that in his couple minutes of play, even when he's not contributing points-wise, he's doing a lot for the offense playmaking-wise, especially if LeBron's sitting. Do you think Kuzma is also going to be a factor?
I don't know. Maybe not as much, I don't think.
Okay.
Because of the experience. I feel like he's just going to take a back seat kind of to the older veterans. I know Caruso might make an impact. Defensively, we've seen some sparks from Caruso, which is kind of shocking. But no, I don't think Kuzma will make that big of an impact this series. Okay, so Gabe, bringing it back to the Miami and the Boston series. When looking at Bam Adebayo, who do you think will be the piece to stop him on the Boston roster? I mean, they have Cantor on the bench, they have Williams, they have Tice. Who do you think will be that guy to kind of numb his great performances so far and in the future?
He is a very tough matchup, I would say. He is a undersized center, but he's strong, athletic, quick, good vertical. And the only real, Boston's kind of has the same thing actually on their big men. Cantor is bigger and slower, so I don't think it would be him unless you're planning to just, bruise him up maybe or just be a taller defender on him. But the other two defenders, Tice and Williams, they are a little more shorter, athletic, strong, and I think that they match Bam's play style better. That being said, even if you put either of them on him, I think that it's going to be hard to slow him down because he's a very good, skilled player, along with being very athletic, having a good physique, and being very smart, high IQ player. So he knows when to, use his takes or when he wants to kick it out instead and create a play. So I think there's not going to be much stopping him, but, the best bet just might have to be the starter Tice because he is roughly the same height, just as athletic and strong as well.
Okay.
So one last question for you before we send this off. Who do you think the X factors are in the Boston-Miami series?
Okay, so when looking at Miami, I think Hero and Robinson, honestly, for me, are the two X factors for Miami. If they can get their shooting and clutch shooting, in fact, with Hero has been great. If they can keep their shooting percentages high and keep on getting, and the other teammates can keep on getting them open looks, I feel like they can make a huge difference in this series. When looking at Boston's X factors, I'm gonna have to say Brad Wanamaker. I mean, he did play well in the Raptors series, and not a lot of people talked about him. But in this series, I mean, if he plays well and he is their sixth man and does get a lot of minutes. Well, now with Hayward back, he can also be an X factor. But him and Wanamaker, I think, are the two that will really make a difference in Boston's lineup, and we're going to see what happens here.
Fair enough. Just to clarify, when I was asking the question for people listening, I was talking about X factors besides the main stars. And Boston has been very strong in their starting lineup. Considering every night you have guys that like Tatum, Brown, Kemba, always performing, and Marcus Smart included technically. So yeah, going off the bench, someone like Wanamaker is what Adam is deciding on. And I think it's strong, and Gordon Hayward coming back will be interesting. Game 3 is going to have to wait till next week recap, but we did see the game already, so we're excited to talk about it. All right, so that's it. We hope you all enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. Check us out on YouTube for visuals. For audio only, check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any other streaming platforms. Check us out on Instagram at Rapzville for NBA news, NBA content. We're moving up, almost at 5,400 followers, so keep following, keep showing love. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Peace.
Peace.